There is a burden that millions of people carry every day. It cannot be seen. It has no weight, no shape, no color. Yet, it can become heavier than any physical object we will ever lift. It is resentment. It is the memory of betrayal that refuses to fade. It is the wound caused by harsh words, broken trust, abandonment, rejection, or injustice. Many people believe that holding on to anger makes them strong. They believe that refusing to forgive protects them from future pain. They tell themselves that forgiveness is weakness, surrender, or acceptance of what happened. But psychology tells a different story. The truth is that forgiveness may be one of the most powerful acts a human being can perform. Not because it changes the past, not because it excuses harmful behavior, but because it liberates the person who chooses it. Today, we will explore the psychology of forgiveness and discover why the ultimate act of freedom is not controlling others, changing the past, or seeking revenge. It is learning how to let go. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. At first, the weight seems manageable. You continue walking. Days become weeks. Weeks become years. The backpack grows heavier. Your shoulders ache. Your posture changes. Your energy slowly disappears. Now imagine that every stone represents a resentment you have carried throughout your life. A betrayal from a friend. A painful breakup. A humiliating experience. A parent who failed to provide the love you needed. A person who never apologized. A mistake you cannot forgive yourself for making. Over time, these emotional stones accumulate. Many people become so accustomed to carrying them that they forget what it feels like to be free. Psychologists have discovered that unresolved resentment affects far more than our emotions. It impacts our physical health. Studies have linked chronic anger and bitterness to increased stress levels, higher blood pressure, sleep disturbances, anxiety, depression, and weakened immune function. The body remembers what the mind refuses to release. Every time we replay an old injury, our nervous system responds as if the event is happening again. The heart rate increases. Stress hormones flood the body. The mind relives the experience. The pain remains active. In a very real sense, refusing to forgive can keep us emotionally trapped inside a moment that ended years ago. The event may be over, but its psychological grip remains. This is one of the great paradoxes of resentment. We believe we are punishing the person who hurt us. In reality, we are often punishing ourselves. The person who caused the wound may have moved on. They may not even think about the event anymore. Yet, we continue carrying the burden every day. We become prisoners of a past that no longer exists. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the prison door. But, before we go further, we must address a common misunderstanding. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean pretending that harmful behavior was acceptable. These are entirely different concepts. You can forgive someone and still establish boundaries. You can forgive someone and choose not to trust them again. You can forgive someone and decide they no longer belong in your life. Forgiveness is not about giving another person permission to continue hurting you. It is about refusing to allow their actions to continue controlling your inner world. The distinction is crucial. Many people resist forgiveness because they believe it requires denying their pain. But true forgiveness begins by fully acknowledging the pain. You cannot release what you refuse to recognize. You cannot heal a wound that you pretend does not exist. Psychological healing starts with honesty. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it was unfair. Yes, something valuable was lost. Acceptance of reality is not weakness. It is the first step toward freedom. One of the reasons forgiveness feels so difficult is because our minds are naturally wired to seek justice. When someone harms us, we want balance restored. We want accountability. We want acknowledgement. We want an apology. We want the person responsible to understand exactly how much suffering they caused. These desires are deeply human. Yet, life rarely provides the closure we seek. Many people never receive the apology they deserve. Many relationships end without explanation. Many wounds remain unanswered. If our healing depends entirely on external closure, we surrender our emotional freedom to circumstances beyond our control. Forgiveness offers a different path. Instead of waiting for someone else to release us, we release ourselves. Instead of making peace dependent on another person's actions, we make peace an internal decision. This is where forgiveness becomes an act of personal power. The moment you forgive, you reclaim ownership of your emotional life. You stop allowing the past to dictate your present. You stop giving old wounds authority over your future. You become free to move forward. Perhaps the most challenging form of forgiveness is self-forgiveness. For many people, the harshest judge they will ever face is themselves. Years after making a mistake, they continue replaying it. They analyze every detail. They imagine alternative outcomes. They criticize themselves endlessly. The event becomes part of their identity. Instead of saying, "I made a mistake," they begin saying, "I am a mistake." This shift is devastating because mistakes are experiences. They are not identities. Psychologists recognize that excessive self-condemnation often leads to anxiety, depression, perfectionism, and emotional paralysis. When we refuse to forgive ourselves, we remain trapped in the version of ourselves that made the mistake. We deny our capacity to grow. We deny our capacity to learn. We deny our capacity to change. Self-forgiveness is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about accepting responsibility while recognizing our humanity. Every human being is imperfect. Every human being has regrets. Every human being has moments they wish they could erase. Growth becomes possible when we learn from those moments, rather than living inside them forever. Think about a child learning to walk. The child falls repeatedly. No one expects perfection. No one concludes that failure defines the child's identity. Falling is understood as part of the learning process. Yet, as adults, we often hold ourselves to impossible standards. We expect flawless decisions. We expect perfect judgment. We expect ourselves to know things we could only learn through experience. Forgiveness reminds us that growth requires compassion, not only for others, but also for ourselves. Another fascinating aspect of forgiveness is its relationship with freedom. Most people associate freedom with external conditions. Financial freedom, political freedom, freedom of movement, freedom of choice. While these forms of freedom are important, psychological freedom operates differently. A person can possess every external advantage and still remain imprisoned by resentment. Likewise, a person facing enormous challenges can experience profound inner freedom. Why? Because freedom, ultimately, begins within. The ancient philosophers understood this principle. They recognized that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we can influence how we respond. We cannot rewrite the past, but we can determine whether the past continues writing our future. Forgiveness represents one of the clearest examples of this truth. It transforms us from victims of our experiences into authors of our lives. The journey toward forgiveness is rarely immediate. It is often gradual. Some wounds require time. Some require reflection. Some require grief. Some require professional support. There is no deadline for forgiveness. There is no perfect timeline. The goal is not to force yourself to forgive before you are ready. The goal is to remain open to the possibility that one day freedom may become more important than resentment. And when that day arrives, something remarkable begins to happen. The emotional weight starts to lift. Mental energy returns. Relationships improve. Stress decreases. Perspective expands. The wound may still exist, but it no longer controls your life. You remember the experience without becoming consumed by it. You acknowledge the pain without carrying it everywhere you go. You move forward with wisdom instead of bitterness. This transformation does not erase the past. It transcends it. And perhaps That is the deepest lesson forgiveness has to offer. Forgiveness is not something we do for those who hurt us. It is something we do for ourselves. It is a declaration that our future matters more than our pain. It is a decision to stop sacrificing today's peace to yesterday's wounds. It is the courage to release what no longer serves us. At its core, forgiveness is an act of liberation. A liberation from anger. A liberation from bitterness. A liberation from emotional captivity. The person who learns to forgive discovers a profound truth. Holding on does not make us stronger. Sometimes, true strength is found in letting go. So if there is a burden you have been carrying, perhaps today is the day to examine it. Perhaps today is the day to ask whether resentment is still serving you. Perhaps today is the day to consider a different path. Not because the past was acceptable, not because the wound was small, but because your freedom is worth more than your suffering. This is Silent Mind Academy. Remember, forgiveness does not change what happened. It changes what happens next. And sometimes, the greatest act of courage is not fighting harder. It is finally putting down the weight you were never meant to carry forever.